Okay, let's dive into this because today we are unpacking an absolutely breathtaking match. We're looking at Enzo Maresca's very first home Premier League game in charge of Manchester City. And let me tell you, this was a match against Bournemouth that looked for all the world like it was going to end in a historic disaster for the new boss, right up until the dying moments. We're talking a massive story of tactical friction, desperate changes, and an incredibly dramatic late show.
The scene at the Etihad Stadium was just set beautifully. Right before kickoff, a massive typo unfurled across the stands reading, "Welcome back, Enzo." It was this joyous, celebratory homecoming for Maresca, who, as we know, was formerly an assistant to Pep Guardiola. He's standing out there on the touchline, looking incredibly dapper in this baggy 1980s Hollywood-style suit, just soaking in the adulation from the crowd. But as you'll see, that initial joy very quickly morphed into nerve-wracking tension.
Because, well, Bournemouth didn't just show up to be part of the welcoming committee. Let's look at the stakes here, because they are fascinating. On one hand, you have Bournemouth arriving on the back of an absolutely incredible 18-game unbeaten run in the league under Marco Rose, a fantastic foundation that was built by his predecessor, Andoni Iraola. But then you flip to the other side of the ledger, and it is pure historical misery. I mean, in their last 14 visits to Manchester City, Bournemouth had lost 13 times. Their only other result? A draw, all the way back in 1989. This was your classic David versus Goliath setup, but this time David was arriving in some seriously formidable form.
And literally right from the whistle, an upset was brewing. Bournemouth did not just sit back, park the bus, and try to survive the first half. No way. They were aggressive, they were right in City's faces, and they actively disrupted Maresca's side. They played with this incredible potency that completely unsettled the home crowd.
All that pressure finally culminated in the 26th minute. Let's walk through this precise sequence together because it really exposes exactly how vulnerable City looked. A ball gets flipped upfield from the Bournemouth right-back area. Ruben Diaz and Abdulkader Husnov have this miscommunication, a fatal, massive mix-up. Razan jumps right on the loose ball, feeds it over to Evanilson. Evanilson then drives a cross in from the right, totally catching City's Rico Lewis out of position, and there is Marcus Tavernier just waiting to poke it home. 1-0 to Bournemouth. Maresca actually went straight over to his monitor on the sideline just to try and figure out how his defense could be so naive.
Section 1. Maresca's Blueprint. Tactical Friction. Now, what's really interesting about this is examining why City looked so entirely disjointed.
Seriously, why did a team packed with this many superstars look so vulnerable? Look at these tactical surprises Maresca rolled out for his big home debut. He deployed Mark Gahey, his £116 million signing, as a holding midfielder rather than a traditional center back. He preferred Nico O'Reilly, who, remember, was actually City's Player of the Year at left back, right in the number 10 role. What this did was push Phil Foden out to the left wing, and it left Erling Haaland completely, totally isolated up front. It was a very Guardiola-esque experiment, clearly relying on quick balls to Haaland and driving runs from the wings. But in practice, it was incredibly clunky. The attack was totally impotent.
A major part of this friction stems directly from that number 6 role. This is the player charged with controlling the game's tempo, delivering those incisive passes, and basically mopping up any defensive messes. With Rodri having departed for Barcelona, there is just a massive void in the center of the pitch for City. Elliot Anderson is supposed to be the new primary number 6, but pairing him with an out-of-position Mark Gahey, it just wasn't clicking. They couldn't control the transitions at all, which is exactly how they got torn apart for Tavernier's opening goal.
Coming out for the second half, Maresca actually initially stuck to his guns, but as the minutes ticked by and the tactics continued to misfire, you could feel the desperation growing. Let's map out these second-half substitutions. On 55 minutes, Mateus Nunes comes on for Rico Lewis. At 61 minutes, Anderson takes a knock to the knee, has to be replaced by Mateo Kovacic. Just 2 minutes later, that O'Reilly experiment at number 10 is fully abandoned as Ryan Shirky enters the fray. Finally, at 82 minutes, a totally ineffective Phil Foden makes way for Jack Grealish. Maresca was practically spinning on the touchline in sheer frustration by this point.
And that brings us to this number right here, 84. For 84 minutes, Bournemouth held the line. They were literally 6 minutes, plus stoppage time, away from a historic, monumental, first-ever away victory at Manchester City. The Etihad was tense. I mean, you could cut the atmosphere with a knife. The upset was almost complete.
But, you know, football is a game of fine margins, and in the span of just a few frantic minutes, the entire script flipped completely upside down. The agonizing wait for those home fans finally shattered as City unleashed a rapid-fire late show.
Here is exactly how the dam finally broke in the 84th minute. Substitute Rayon Cherki floats a vital corner in from the right side. Mark Guehi, who, let's be honest, had looked pretty clunky in midfield all afternoon, rises up to meet it. He powers a header that takes a wicked deflection off Bournemouth's Adrian Trufford. Goalkeeper Giorgio Petrovic is left completely stranded, wrong-footed. It's 1-1, and just like that, Guehi totally redeems his shaky performance.
But City? They weren't done. In the 91st minute, deep into stoppage time, it happens again. Cherki, who absolutely changed the game off the bench, taps the ball over to left-back Josko Guardiol, who finishes it brilliantly. The whole stadium erupts, but wait, the offside flag goes up. Cue an absolutely agonizing wait as VAR checks the lines. Everyone is holding their breath. Finally, the decision comes down. Goal. Legal. Maresca is literally bouncing around the touchline in sheer relief as a disastrous loss miraculously transforms into a 2-1 victory.
Section 2. By the numbers, the statistical reality. And this brilliantly illustrates whether City actually deserved that dramatic win.
Look, the narrative of the game was Bournemouth's heroic resistance, right? But did City actually deserve the 3 points? Let's look at the cold hard numbers. First up, possession. Despite Bournemouth's incredible high pressure and those dangerous counterattacks we saw in the first half, City flat out dominated the ball over the full 90 minutes. We're talking 66.1% possession to Bournemouth's 33.9%. City slowly, methodically, just ground their opponents down by making them chase the game. And when we look at expected goals, or XG, the picture becomes even clearer. City generated 2.36 expected goals compared to just 0.63 for Bournemouth. The objective data here firmly supports City's victory. They were creating significantly higher quality chances across the entirety of the match, even if it agonizingly took them until the 84th minute to finally convert one. Just look at the sheer volume of City's attacking output. 13 shots to 5, 8 corners to 3. But honestly, the most staggering metric here is the touches in the opposition box. City had 37 touches inside Bournemouth's penalty area. Bournemouth, they managed just 6 in City's. To put that into perspective, it visually demonstrates how, especially in that second half, City essentially pitched a tent and set up camp in Bournemouth's half of the pitch.
And because City were camped out there, Bournemouth had to survive an absolute siege. Look at the clearances. Bournemouth registered 28 clearances to City's 12. It just goes to show how desperately Marco Rose's men had to defend their slim lead against that relentless, suffocating City pressure.
A huge reason for that pressure was City's passing. They completed 569 accurate passes with an 88.8% accuracy rate. Compare that to Bournemouth's 263. This passing discrepancy essentially starved Bournemouth of the ball late in the game. I mean, think about it. When you spend 80 minutes chasing shadows against a team that rarely ever misplaces a pass, mental and physical fatigue is going to set in. And that leads directly to those decisive defensive lapses we saw in the final 10 minutes.
Now, before we wrap up, I've got a quick, pretty surprising fact for you. Amidst all this attacking dominance and late drama, City's main man up top actually had a uniquely quiet night. Erling Haaland, sporting a newly shorn crew cut, was making his 200th appearance for the club. He was sitting on 162 goals, hungry for number 163. But due to that isolated tactical setup we discussed earlier, it just wasn't his day to reach that milestone.
So what does this all mean? Which brings us to the ultimate question leaving this match. Manchester City got the 3 points, sure, but what are we actually taking away from this explainer? Was this the gritty hallmark of a champion's comeback, finding a way to win when absolutely nothing is going right? Or did those 2 late goals merely paper over the cracks of Enzo Maresca's highly flawed, pretty clunky new tactical system? It is absolutely something to ponder as we watch this brand new era at the Etihad unfold.